All right, everyone. Welcome to this full moon Sidereal Astrology forecast. This is for the weekend of March 30th through April 1st of 2018. All right, so a full moon this weekend in Virgo. If you were expecting me to say Libra, do check out that link down below for more information. But yep, this weekend is about now embodying these qualities of the maiden. Essentially about getting into our self-discipline, into the earthy aspects of what has been a very spiritual time. We've had a lot of planets in Pisces, Mercury retrograde through Pisces. So it's been a lot of internalization, a lot of deep diving. And now with Virgo, to help balance all of that out, it's about doing the work, right? In the physical world. It could be through our self-improvement, could be through our work and service, but whatever it is, embodying it and bringing that presence into the everyday sphere. All right, so we'll talk about that. We also do have a square with this full moon up to Mars and Saturn. It is going to be opposite up to Mercury retrograde in Pisces. So let's look at all of this here in more detail when we return. All right, so here's the chart for the full moon. It will be on Saturday, March 31st at 09:14 Eastern time. These videos are for Eastern time, so if you want to make that calculation for wherever you are in the world, you can use that time period. So full moon in Virgo, yes, a time of now incorporating the counterbalance to all of this Pisces, dreamy, etheric energy that we've been experiencing. So with this, it's essentially the high point of the lunar month. There's insight coming in this weekend. There's also a lot of momentum. And usually with this sort of insight, it's great to do a status check. And really a status check from over the past 6 months since the last time we had a new moon here or in this part of Virgo. So good to do a status check, good to be open to insights coming in, but at the same time, to use the high point, the energy in the physical world, right? To take action, to do things, right? In a way that's incorporating whatever it is we've been working on and whatever insights we may gain at this time. So with that being said, Virgo is specifically about incorporating the aspects of what you could say physical perfection or the self-perfection, striving for that, right? Because there isn't any true like perfection in a human being, right? The real perfection is Pisces. This is the divine perfection, the universal perfection, and surrendering to that, right? And that's what we've been really, getting in touch with this Pisces time period. So, but at the same time, striving towards the perfection, right? What do we actually have control over, right? This is, again, our self-improvement, how we respond to things, the actions we take, refining ourselves, doing things that require self-discipline to ground the spiritual energy, right? We can't have spirituality. We can't have enlightenment, peace, tranquility without doing the work and without living it in the everyday sphere. And that's what Virgo symbolizes. So it could be through disciplining ourselves through our meditation, to meditate perhaps, to maybe get good diet or routine, right? Good routine, sleeping patterns, things like this, to do our work or our service, which is probably, arguably, the most spiritual thing we can do, being of service to other, however we might do that, right? These types of things with Virgo. And now doing a status check with this. How are these qualities in our life at this time? How are these qualities in your life at this time, right? How can we incorporate a bit of this grounded, pragmatic, organizational energy as well? Maybe organizing our environment, fixing things, improving things, finding solutions to things in the physical sense, right? Again, what we do have control over. So great time for this, great time for the routine, the work, service, self-refinement. This is essentially what's being incorporated now collectively with this. All right, so with these aspects, we do have the ruler of Virgo, Mercury, who is opposite this full moon retrograde in Pisces. So I think a lot of this full moon is about balance. I mean, most full moons are, because it's always a balance between the sun and moon energy. But in this case, the dispositor, the ruler, Mercury, is almost completely opposite this full moon in Pisces, retrograde. So with this, I think although it is a great time, like I said, with full moons to get active in the world, it's also with this retrograde doing so with flexibility. That information is changing, things are changing during the retrograde, and we want to be as adaptive as possible as insight changes. We don't want to get, make solid commitments or solid things that we can't back out of, because it's likely, or often, that information changes through the retrograde. And this is why it's so important to be flexible, but to try new things, to get in the world, experiment, and learn. Really, learning with Mercury retrograde. Usually a lot to learn with this. A lot of it is about revisiting matters, maybe revisiting matters from the past 6 months. All right, and this kind of a thing. So really good for this. And again, with the dispositor in Pisces, I think it's again through surrendering what's outside of our control. This is very important, even though it will be a time this weekend and the next couple of weeks about embodying that self-control. At the same time, in order to balance that out, we do have to surrender what's outside of our control, to have acceptance of what is, to be as present as we can, and it'll be through that we'll be grounding all of this and listening to our intuition, being receptive. Again, great time to be gaining insight from dreams, meditations, more receptive ways of gaining information with all of this. All right. So that's the Mercury retrograde. Now it is forming a T-square here. Squares up to Saturn and Mars. Mars is getting closer to Saturn. They're going to go conjunct next week. And so this is a challenging aspect collectively. With Saturn, there is this limitation. And maybe we were feeling this last week, maybe around Thursday, right? This kind of needing to be patient with things, kind of seeing the harsh, or just, let's say, the harsh reality of things. Just the reality of things at this time. And this is good. This is actually a test from the past 6 months. If there's been anything you've been incorporating the past 6 months in particular, how to have patience with it, right? Discipline and doing the work, again, just like Virgo, but with the long-term perspective, seeing the big picture that things do take time. Now with the Mars side of it, there could be a bit of blocked energy. We could be feeling a bit frustrated collectively. Again, this energy is feeling blocked with Mars getting closer to Saturn. With Mars in a square, it can feel a bit frustrated. We're trying to assert ourselves. We're trying to get what we want now. But with Saturn, with the square, it's taking that step back or 2 steps back. Waiting or being patient or doing the work. Or challenging ourselves. If there's not enough Mars energy, if you don't feel like, there's enough initiative with some things in your life or whatever this might be pertaining to, maybe it will require taking the proactive approach to things, right? Taking that conscious effort to take action, to take initiative, to assert ourselves with the square to Mars. So it could be an over extreme or an under extreme, but with this square, it's really good to balance this. With Saturn, patience, discipline as best as we can, seeing the long term. With Mars, really non-attachment as best as we can to our needs. Observing the ego's desire to want things now and in a certain way, and accepting that. Acknowledging it, being aware of it, accepting it for what it is, and just bringing that conscious light to it helps balance it out. And if there's not enough Mars energy, again, taking the action and initiative. All right, so that is the full moon. I think it's a very constructive full moon in general. There's a lot of earth energy with the Virgo, with the square to Saturn. Although it's been a very dreamy and etheric time, this is great. This is going to help balance out a lot of this etheric energy. And it can be very constructive with this square. Productive, long-term, patient, discipline, setting 3-month goals, 6-month goals, these types of things. Or if it's not goal-related, just being observant that we are all integrating this very earthy, grounded, and patient energy at this time. All right, so let me go ahead and show you all the weekend aspects that we do have here. Here's going to be the full moon at 09:14 Eastern time on Saturday. Leading up to it, we could be learning some things on Friday with Mercury trining up to the North Node, we usually don't feel this very personally, but there could be some insight coming in about our life path, helping us shift and pivot on our life path perhaps. And that's really what the full moon's about. It is a pivoting time. Usually with whatever the awareness is, if it is something in particular, but with this insight, usually we pivot. We want to, take a new direction or something. So good weekend to do that. And again, with Mercury retrograde, that flexibility. Mercury retrograde is going to go over the sun on Sunday. So that day in particular, there could be a collective kind of scattered energy. Sometimes it's hard to think. There's a lot of passion behind what we're thinking about, or energy behind it. It's like the fire with the mind and even with the communication. So anything you can do to help ground the mind and communication. And I personally find writing things down to be tremendously helpful. So if you're coming up with a plan or a budget or working, some things, really good to write it down in tangible form. Or even journaling, right? Journaling is fantastic. Anything that helps ground what can be a very energized time behind the mind and communication, or speaking with a close friend or things like that. All right, and then as we get into next week, we do have Mars getting closer to Saturn. So that is that sort of limitation energy. There will be a new chapter with this next week. And this is going to be more neutral in nature, which is setting some 2.5-year plans in terms of, our perspectives in terms of where we do want to cultivate some long-term things, where we can use that short-term Mars energy for long-term matters. All right, so have a fantastic weekend, everyone. Thank you for watching. Be sure to hit that bell button to stay up to date for these daily videos. Don't forget to hit the like button, and I'll see you all Monday for the daily forecast.